Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to the new show, the off-season show, Trade and Draft Period, your weekly one-stop shop for all your trade, draft, and just general chit-chat about it. I'm joined today by the lovely Everescent Leg Dog. How are we doing?
Fantastic, mate. You know, this is my favorite time of year because we're never a part of it. So we get to focus on all the good things like list building, drafts, trades, free agency, get to yell at the AFL for their inability to structure things properly. It's fantastic. And it's essentially Christmas for me, Pommy.
It's the most wonderful time. We just need like Mariah Carey to sing a trade song.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
I'll start penning it. I actually did write a poem last year about the trade period starting. I'll see if I can dig that up for next time.
Well, for those that don't understand, the lovely Kira's in chat. Good day to you. Adrian's in as well. The wonderful, for those who don't know, like Dog, he is very musically gifted. One day you may know what I'm alluding to, but when you see it, it'll change your life. Well, we've got a lot to go through. Pom has gone mental, a lot for us to discuss. And recently this happened. Liam Jones, he has signed bunny ears because of the way AFL works. You can't sign until a set date, even though he's out of contract, but he's on Carlton's list, but he's not. No one quite understands it. I don't even think Liam Jones does, but he has signed. So that means we are going to get a comp pick. So we're guessing somewhere between 36 and 45, I think, is the money, which does make sense because that fucks the doggies, because I believe the doggies currently on 36 from memory. So it doesn't really affect anyone but them who's manipulated the system. So they've got 37. So I think it works kind of perfectly that if they give Carlton that, it doesn't really affect anyone but the Dogs.
Yeah, and I've seen a few people saying that he's going to get a 3-year deal instead of a 2-year deal to try and avoid compensation coming our way. And you know that I don't agree with compensation in general. But in this instance, technically, according to the AFL rules, he actually wouldn't be able to play AFL until the mid-season draft next year. The AFL said extenuating circumstances, you're able to play from the start of next year. As a result of that, that's why I'm pretty confident we will get a compo pick. And I think it'll, as you've said, be around that 35 to 45 mark, which would be a good result for a guy that's 32 at the start of next year, and we've replaced with essentially an identical but younger version.
Yeah, and I've got Peter here, so 36 and 45, that's well into this third round. So that's where I think it is, and I think it might just be poetic. Really, we know with the AFL compensation pick, they try and avoid affecting any shit team. Because of the trades that happened last year, the doggies do happen to be very early in there. So I think they may just look at it and think fair's fair. It kind of pushes the dogs back a little bit as well. And it kind of makes it all well and good. So it'd be an interesting one, wouldn't it? It'd be an interesting one because I think that pick's very valuable for Carlton in what they need to do.
No, it's valuable for us heading into this period, Pom. We've got 10, 28, 62, 64, and 82, as well as a bunch of future picks. You add in that 35 to 45 third rounder, that's going to be crucial to what we do in this offseason. And it's a good pick, even if we didn't move it on. It's a good pick. It's a good range to be selecting in there. So definitely bolsters our hand at this draft.
It does as well. And obviously, we already won that deal anyway because we've got Lewis Young. So it's a good win. Then we've got something very exciting to talk about. So the AFL, this is expected to come into permanent effect, but a lot of questions. Thank you as well to everyone who did it. Bearing in mind, if I don't answer your question this week, I've put some real rippers on the back burner for next week. But this did get asked in quite a bit. Who asked it? Give me 5 seconds. Oh, here we are. Daniel Latrides. If I've massacred your name, I apologize. But you're a very good-looking man with a beard, if that helps work out what I tried to say. And people wanted to explain what that meant. So basically, prior to the rule change now, AFL clubs would do what you hear is salary dumps. Now, Sauce loved helping GWS out with a little bit of a salary cap dump. So effectively what that is trading your shit to get it off your salary cap book, and another mug club saying, oh, we'll take them. Thanks. Examples would be Reece Palmer for Carlton's pick 135. Would be a really good little example. So,
and part of the reason you would trade in a Reece Palmer, like when we did Pom, you need to get your minimum total player payments to the salary floor. We had a bunch of spuds on no money who are young players on no money. So you bring in Reece Palmer to bulk that out, and then it helps you hit that requirement within the AFL.
Mate, spot on. And then I've created some examples. So when this rule comes into effect, currently, this is how it looks in real life. So this is hypothetical. It's just purely an example. No one in the comments goes, Sydney won't trade Gould. Or it's purely so people can understand it to answer your question. So what would this look like in real life is Will Gould and Wrong. That's maybe 400k of salary cap space. They'd give it to Essendon, who have got salary cap space to take on them, and they'd give 40 and 52. So real simple, straightforward trade that. It doesn't need much. So this is what it would look like in today's AFL should this rule start to be used. So Essendon would effectively say, right, okay, you want to re-sign Buddy, you're 500k over your cap. We will give you 500k so you can pay him. In return, you give us pick 17. So that is now a new tool that could be used. And you could build that into back-ended deals as well. So you could, I don't know, buy a player and add 200k. If you were North Melbourne, you could say, right, I want this player. We'll also give you 200k. You give us pick 10. So you could also do it that way as well. But it's just a new trade little drama that Cal Toomey and the AFL believe has been petitioned so heavily it should be in full force by October.
This isn't something that's uncommon in other sports. The NBA is a prime example where there is a capped amount to how much you can spend on a draft pick, buying a draft pick from another team, and I believe there's a cap on how many times you can do it. But in the NBA, you can give an opposition up to $5 million for a draft selection. In that instance, that money goes outside of the salary cap, so it can't actually be used on paying players. It's used on improving your facilities, improving your, buying mascots, all that sort of rubbish. Here, the proposal looks like it's actually going to be relief from the salary cap, which I don't totally agree with. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I reckon it's going to be one of those the rich clubs get richer sort of things, but hopefully it leads to some equalisation where a Geelong is selling first-round picks to developing clubs so that they can bring in talent as well, and Geelong can maintain their premiership tilts. I think that's the theory behind it, Paul.
Yeah, and I think why it's relevant to you guys and girls in the chat, Austin is very manipulative with his draft picks, has a very strict strategy, and it does lead me on to a few questions. I wasn't going to take questions at this stage, but I can see the chat's heating up. So Liam Stocker, it kind of plays into this. Nick Austin has been exceptionally open about his trade handlings, have been fair. So Chera last year was incredibly fair in that negotiation. And a lot of people saying Liam Stocker's worth a third rounder, fourth rounder, you could get something for him. The AFL works this way. So this is a great little question. I saw someone put it in Twitter the other day, or name me any player that's been delisted or got rid of by a club that's gone on to do great things. And there was a few people saying Jared Loynes. Players do strike out like that. But you're thinking of 4 or 5 players in the history of the AFL that have been delisted by a club and gone on to be a success, when on average, the AFL clubs, every team delists 3 players per year. So do the maths. 18 times 3 is what? 54. So even if you said 3 out of 54 will make it who are delisted, that's still a shit percentage. But do that over 10 years, and it's less than 10 players that have been delisted by a club and not gone to VFL and then come back and made it. And when I say made it, played 50% of games, It's so incredibly rare. AFL clubs don't make a mistake. So my point here is, if you watch Nick Austin, he will have known Stocker was delisted pretty soon, and his agent will know before everyone else, including Stocker. They will have put the figures out to other AFL clubs and said, look, are you interested? And I guarantee you the reason Carlton have released him is one reason. No one said yes. So now if you're a list manager, are you going to mess around with a player that rates horrifically below average for his position in the AFL, but also in VFL from that position, runs the risk of being like a lot of players that don't get picked, but people look at the stats and say, why is this state league kid playing? It's a huge risk. And I heard Sauce today, and I've got to say, that was the biggest load of bollocks I've heard from Sauce, because him and Lloyd managed to make 1,000 reasons of why Stocker wasn't playing, but then just bring it back to being tough. And unfortunately, since 2010, being tough in this league without any attributes that state that will work. Mitch Robinson's a great example. He won't make it. And I will guarantee you now, I'll go on record, 100%, Stocker won't get anywhere near 100 AFL games. Carlton haven't made a mistake. They've done the best thing for him, and that's release him and let a club pick him up without negotiating. Because really, if I was a list manager, I'd take a draftee over trading for Stocker. And if we're honest as a football club, would you want to pay a third and fourth for him based on the evidence? Probably not.
We saw the same thing happen last year, Pom, with Jared Brander from West Coast. There was all this talk. They were going to hold him to his contract. They were going to force a trade. They wanted something, anything for him. But everyone in the league knew that he was leaving. Everyone in the league knew that he was going to get delisted if they didn't find a trade. Lo and behold, he got delisted. He moved as a free agent. It's the same situation. Any club who has a slight interest in him knew that they're going to get him for free regardless, whether it's through the preseason draft, whether it was through delisted free agency. So there's no point sometimes pushing it out and contesting it. If he still had a year left on his deal, absolutely, you move him on, you trade him for a late pick. He's out of contract. There's no point delaying it when you can just move on as a club and start focusing your energies into more positive things in terms of acquiring players, working on trades. They knew the end result was he'd be at another club. So, yeah, they're not going to force a trade. They made the call to cut him. I know people disagree with that, but the club knows. The club made the call.
I admire Nick Austin because he could have maybe hung out for a fourth and a fifth, but he's standing by his words of being fair to the player and the club. And I admire that because he could have, if he was Essendon, he would have hung on and hung on and hung on, let him go through the mid-season draft. He would have missed out on picking himself up at VFL state levels because they have a cut-off period very similar to the AFL. So then he probably wouldn't have got the best wage at state level because they've already made their big list calls. So he's really done, I think, a commendable thing that he's done the right thing by the player. And I'll back Nick Austin on that. So enough of the Stocker talk because he's not a player now. And if he goes back to Essendon, fuck him, as Pom always says.
We've also got a donation in chat, Pommy.
Have I? I am the wonderful Ugar. I hope I've said that right, Ugar. If I haven't, I apologize. Coffee on me, gentlemen.
Man.
Well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I reckon old Let Dog's a soy latte type guy, so I won't be able to.
Even worse, Pom, I don't drink hot drinks, so it's wasted on me. I'll have a child's soft drink or a glass of orange juice, please.
We'll have a beer each. How's that?
Oh, that actually beer works. Yeah, I'll have a beer.
You know what I mean? So then we have got a bit of trade news. So this gentleman here has cleared out his locker, which basically means he's gone. He's gone. So this is it here. Blake Acres, 27 years old at the start of next season, 120 games, so he fits the bill. Now, we're going to go into it. I've created some POM scales for us all because I want this to be like a list management discussion. We're around the round table. We're making a case for him. So these are the key 4 stat lines from him against other wingers. So what I've done as well is I've done the hard bit and I've actually done these stats against wingers. So the Champs data actually categorize them and then they do it versus other positions. They don't just do it as an AFL norm. So very important to see. So average winger in terms of disposals, what you'd expect to see. Now, these are the key things. If you watched our video with Terry, we talked about going with needs when you're drafting and trading. And kicking efficiency is a big part that kills Carlton. So rated elite with his kicking. Meters gained, again, elite, 26th in the AFL for meters gained on a whole as well. That's including everyone, halfbacks who genuinely get hires. And 5.8 marks. So Blake Acres, very defensive wingman. If you watch Vossi, Jack Noon's played a lot of football because he likes that defensive winger. It's very similar to what Port Adelaide play, and it's very similar to Lee Matthews, Brisbane, that used to roll a player behind the wing to allow the halfback flanks to join the midfield. So it's a very Vossi thing, and probably suits the bill, doesn't he? Fits the bill of what you need.
Absolutely, Pom. I think he's going to be a nice complement to Lockie O'Brien on our list in those starting wing positions. And eventually, if someone else overtakes one of them, great. But starting round one next year, assuming that young Blake Acres is healthy, he's going to be a lock in that 22. He brings exactly what we need. Probably what we've lacked a little bit in that we've had Nunes run through, we've had Setterfield run through, we've had a bunch of guys. We've not really locked down that second wing position. And the players we've tried through there haven't really had that penetrating kick where you look at a guy like Blake Acres and not every single kick is just as high as he bloody can, throw it on the boot and hope for the best. He's actually a little bit more methodical with how he uses the ball. And I'm excited to see him come over to the club. I know that when he initially was told he was going to get traded back to Fremantle from St Kilda, even though he's from WA, he wasn't super happy about it, wanted to stay in Melbourne, has been looking for an opportunity to come to Melbourne. And I think we've got a really good opportunity here to add in another senior sort of body, a guy hitting his prime or in the middle of his prime who can grow with this side. And 27, we should be able to get 3, 4, 5+ years out of this bloke. So very exciting stuff for me.
I think he's exciting as well for those who are fans of Doherty on the ball, fans of Fisher on the ball. Very interesting. I was privy to a good friend of mine is a massive Fremantle fan. And in the forums there was a big discussion between them. They do votes. So far, he's third in players of the finals. And I know there's been a lot of talk. Freo fans don't rate him. Anyone who knows football has rated this guy who's a Fremantle fan. A lot of the nuffies don't. A bit like me, I wouldn't rate Cripps. If Cripps requested a trade, I'd soon turn on him. But big thing about him is he's not going to change Carlton too much. But what he does do is, you're looking at how Vossi plays, he likes that defensive mid. So I don't think it affects O'Brien or Cottrell. I think it makes their job a little bit more important because he's trialed O'Brien as that defensive winger and it didn't work. So I think this guy will play 22 games next year. He will own one thing. And I think then it puts a lot of pressure on O'Brien and Cottrell to really increase their output on the offensive side, but also allow Doc to float up on that wing and into the midfield. So I think it's a great acquisition for Carlton because you saw Nunes' vulnerability when he was off halfback flank and they did that rotation. You started to see him a bit exposed. So Blake there, that 6 marks is the most important stat as well because Voss loves his wingers. And this is why O'Brien was dropped last year to work on his presenting in transition. And Blake Acres, that's his specialty. He likes to use his frame to help you exit D50. So very exciting for us.
And Pom, you've got, are you going to flag up the, what did you call it? The gettability scale? What did
Here
you
we
call
go.
it?
You ready? Get ready for this. I've worked really hard at this, right? So this is we're going to call this one the Pomability, we'll call it. So what we've done is we've categorized these into 4 things. 1, need. 1, don't fucking need him. 10, I'll sell my wife for him. Skill set. So the skill set is based on, is he a good kick? Is he good defensively for that position? Is he, if he was a midfielder, Has he got a point of difference? If he was a forward, does he present? Does he kick goals? Durability is an important one because Vossi's mentioned it, and we've gone with the scale of history of injuries because Carlton froth an injured player. And gettability, how likely is it we could do a deal that's beneficial for both sides? You can see here, 9 very easy, skill set very good, 9-9. Durability, the guy has not had any injuries. He had 1 injury out for 2 weeks in 2000. So that's brilliant. And gettability, the guy's got no fucking locker.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's not just that. If you believe the reports, he essentially, because they've got to pay for guys like Luke Jackson to come in, players like that, he's been offered a new salary at half his current rate. So you'll read that he's going to be bargain of the year and he'll come to the Blues on an AFL average wage and all that sort of stuff. And it's purely because they can't fit him in. And that's why I think I think he's worth more than what we're going to pay for him in terms of draft capital or players that we trade over. I imagine that Fremantle fans are going to expect quite a bit for him because of the skills that he brings. But I think the fact that they essentially can't or have refused to actually pay him for his services, I think that's going to impact his cost. And I think we're going to get him on a little bit of a bargain.
This is a deal that 2 years ago we'd pay $700K for. And some idiot at Carlton would say we actually see him as a full forward.
Yeah.
So see Zach Williams. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I like it. Sorry, Dale. We are going to play more than 22 games, but I think
he's going to get rested.
Yeah, because he runs so much, mate. You've got to give him 4 weeks off. Do I think Doc will do an Elliot Yeo midfield transition? Don't think full time. I think he'll definitely pinch hit.
What do you think this is going to cost us in a trade?
Don't worry, Doug. Don't worry, you and John, you're keeping me in check. Costings, I think he'll be somewhere between a second and maybe an early third. I think they'll want something for him, though, particularly with the Jackson deal. So I think Austin will succumb to it as well, knowing we've got another pick coming in. So I don't think it'll be the Jones pick. I think it will be Carlton's second rounder, which at the moment is 28. So I think that's fair for both parties. Carlton have got him for dirt cheap anyway, for $350K is the max I've seen quoted.
Yep, it'll either, I think you're right, I think it'll be 28 or potentially our future second. I'd love him to get a deal done for the Jones compo, but I don't imagine that that'll be the case. But who knows? We like Austin. He can get some stuff done.
You never know. You never know. And then we've got this question came in from Gimaggio. I can say that because it's kind of like a soccer name. Grundy, discuss, because I think he's effing gettable. I don't mind it. Let's have a look at Brodie Grundy. So here he is, 28 years old, 177 games played. Rook, and there he is in the Carlton clobber. Look at him.
Jeez, it looks
like
good,
a
doesn't
Carlton
it?
Player.
He does. I once saw him riding around on a unicycle. So I don't know how that makes you feel, Pom, but geez, he looked cool doing it.
Each to his own. Hey, you've got to have a hobby. Hey, at least it's a legal hobby. So, I mean, this is him against the Rucks. As you know, he's a ball-getting ruckman. 30.3 hit-outs. He's a beast. Clearances, beast. I want to talk about this hit-out win percentage. It's in the high average to good. Now, the problem when champs start to do this is they do the top 10%. And the problem is sometimes you throw dickheads into it who don't ruck. Like Cripps did it a couple of years ago, went at 100% for the 2 hit-outs he attended. So it completely flaws the thing. But that is, like, if you go at 45% win percentage, you're taking the piss somewhat. So, but that's Brodie Grundy. So on paper, very good footballer. Initial thoughts, chat. Initial thoughts, like Dog.
Yeah, look, you and I have discussed him off platform a couple of times. I think he'd come in and be your number one ruck. I don't know how realistic it is that he's available to us. I think he's available. I don't know if he's available to us, but he'd immediately make us a better outfit. As much as I love Pito and TDK is coming along, we still don't have that established, you know exactly what you're going to get every single week ruckman. I think outside of maybe an opportunity here, I think after Todd Goldstein signed on with North Melbourne, and it looks like Steph Martin might retire, I don't think there's any of those veteran rucks out there that we'll be looking at anymore. So if an opportunity came up for Brodie Grundy to come in, I think you cop the hit on if a Mark Pittonet gets upset and leaves, or a TDK has to play forward. I think you cop the hit because he's that good. And Collingwood fans who are trying to talk themselves into him leaving and them not having hurt feelings are saying that he's actually not that good. He's been elite in basically every category for the last sort of 6-7 years. He had a slight down year in the 9 games he played this year, but this guy is a beast. He's an absolute beast.
Mate, I agree. And we've got the Pom ability scale. So I've ascertained him as a 6. Now, some people will say, Pom, I'd have him as a 10. All of our rucks are in contract. So having 4 ruckmen on your list is over the need thing. And I would say, if we're honest, if we all did a list of what we really needed, 1, 2, 3, 4 positions, ruck wouldn't be high up on that list of what we actually need to start round 1 if everyone's fit. Skill set is obviously a 9, though. He's one of the best in the league. Durability. Now, this is the big thing I want you to think of. These lower leg injuries historically in the AFL with ruckmen in their late 20s start to become reoccurring. So there is a question mark on there. Getability, I've got him as an 8 because I think they want to sell him. Those who know me know I've got a very good friend at Melbourne. It's not 100% done that he's going to Melbourne. I can 100% confirm that. That's all I can confirm. But I reckon it is very close because the grinny on his face when we play golf gets bigger. But I do think there's always a complication. I do think, though, for me, it would cost a lot of money because at the moment they are willing to pay 300, which leaves 700k. Now, bit about salaries, Carlton salary cap. If you look to last year to this year, with what we've brought in and what we've got, we're going at plus 200, which means it's changed 200k. So there is categorically no salary cap issue at Carlton, and should Carlton want to fit him in, Nick Austin knows how much it costs. So no salary cap talk in chat. It's impossible to go over your salary cap in the AFL, but I don't think it'll happen.
And just for those to put everyone at ease, you can essentially the deals aren't set in concrete. You can renegotiate them mid-deal. So if you do hit a salary wall, in theory, you can flatten it out over a couple of years or back-end it or whatever. You can move the money around and make it work. So from a salary point of view, if the club came out and said, we can do it, you got to believe that they can do it. It might impact you down the road because he would be on the list until 2027, which is another 5 years. But we can afford him. It's just whether you want to pay the price, and it'd be a high price, wouldn't it, Pom?
I mean, for me, I don't know how chat feel. Even though Grundy is elite, for me, unless I could get rid of someone else on the list, one of our ruckmen, I don't think I would be doing it. If I could get rid of a Pittonet or a Murkoff, but he's not going to be worth anything and go down to 3. But when it's 5 years, that's my issue. If it was like a year deal or a 2-year deal and we had some cash in value once TDK gets right, I'd be all for it. But when it's 5 years on that salary, because we'll take him at that salary, so you'd imagine it would be $1 million. That is a big issue because Carlton would have no offload ability and we just have to probably do the same as Collingwood do. So I don't think we're in a position for long-term health of our list. I don't like it.
No, but geez, it'd be exciting, wouldn't it?
Makes me sad. Like, I'm sad saying it. And then the costings, I reckon if they're paying 300k, they obviously want rid of him for their own books. But I think it would be a future first and probably a second. I think you probably, because you're doing them a favour as well. But I think because they're paying that 300k, they'd probably just want a little bit more. So I reckon that's probably about fair. Future first and a second.
Yeah, slightly different situation. A guy like Adam Treloar in a position that you could fill quite easily across the league. He probably wasn't worth anything going out. They probably should have paid a pick to trade him when they did. Brodie Grundy's a different a totally different prospect. You have to pay a pick to get him despite his salary, because his salary isn't bad salary. His salary is good salary because he's a good player. It might be bad salary at the end of the deal, but up front, you'd have to trade him. You'd have to essentially take the salary out of it, and you're trading for him, and it's going to cost you a first. And I agree, Pom, probably a second, and there'd be some backing and forthing on some swaps. But I agree, no, open market salary or not, that's going to be your cost.
I was going to say, Adonis and Gav, I agree with both of you as well. If this was Sean Darcy, we might be having a different conversation, because I do like that little critter, but he does look good in navy blue. Let's just have one more look at him before we piss him off. But that's what could have been.
Everyone looks good in navy blue, Pom.
Hey, they do. Do you know what I mean? Apart from some of my exes. But the next one was Yasav Mazouk. Hopefully I've said that right. I'll hope. But James Harms, he wanted to know about James Harms. So I don't mind it. Masouk asked if we could play him on the wing. Checked it. He's played 11% in his career on the wing. So we'd be buying him as his native position, which currently is high half forward, pinch it in the mid. So imagine a guy like Jack Martin who's actually fit, basically. But these are his numbers. You can see here when you base him across the other guys that have played the same thing. He fits the bill in 143 games, 26 years old. Fits the bill of probably what Carlton are looking for. But outside of the tackle pressure, it's a bit meh. What them yellows are saying, particularly in these positions, is anyone can basically, it's just what everyone you find. You find everyone like this.
Yeah, not an exciting one for me. I understand asking the question. He's kind of like would fill a Jack Nunes-esque role in that he can play multiple positions. He can play forward, he can play mid and be a tagger, and he has played behind the ball, but I don't think he's someone that fits the bill for us. We don't have anyone on the list that's like a dedicated stopper. He's done a pretty good job of that and can still find the pill when he does it in the past. But I think you could find a player to do that for a lot cheaper. I also, this is me, I guess I'm reporting it. As of right now, this could change. He'll be at North Melbourne next year. He's still got 2 years left to go on a deal, but I think he'll ask for a trade to go to North. So I don't think he'll even be an option for us. But I like the thought process. We are, at least Pom as a collective, we're now looking at our list and identifying weaknesses. Tackle pressure is a weakness. We're looking at players that could potentially fulfill that. And I love that for us as a Blue Abroad community. We're coming so far.
I've got to say the questions, absolutely, even in chat now, brilliant. Turning me on. But these are the questions we need to look at. And these are Jake Arms. Now, I've ascertained his need that I've given him quite a high score, I think, purely because he comes from a winning culture so far. They've won something recently. His mature age, and to just link this with Carl's previous, we've gone for 21, 25-year-olds. You think we'll do things differently? I think Carlton are going to attack the draft hard, and I think they're going to have certain targets in mind, but I don't think we'll see many trades in. And I just don't think, with the position he plays, I think we have a lot of players where we don't know their best positions yet. Jack Carroll would be a great example, who has been trialled across high half forward, on the wing and on the ball. Very similar to Harms early in his career. And my brain's just thinking, do I want Harms, who basically is Carroll 5 years later? Or is it better saying, this is the role I want from you? Because I think Carroll, pound for pound, is a better footballer than Harms, has got a higher ceiling. Skill set, it's a bit meh. It's a bit better than average. Durability, 9. He does stay fit and healthy. And gettability, I think he's only a 6. I think for Carlton, it's going to be a lot more than we're willing to pay, because I think he'll be about a second to a third. And I think it's way too much for what Carlton are looking for. I think it takes way too much draft stock offers.
Yeah, I agree. And I also don't totally agree with, I know they didn't win the premiership this year, but a team that is in that premiership discussion, I don't want to be giving them draft picks to start their rebuild either. Like, piss off. If you really don't want him, let him walk and we'll pick him up in the preseason draft. So, no, not going to happen, would be my guess.
Yep, so it's enough from us. But, I mean, do you know what I mean? I agree with Luke as well. I'm a big fan of drafting. Big fan of drafting. I'll tell you for why. We've got some great series coming on the draft. On the Pommy and Oz channel, I'm doing something that's never been done in Australia, right? And that is I will be chronicling every player that has nominated for the Combine. So every player. So stay out for that. Every player. It has taken me fucking ages. But this is a great question because someone gave me some draft questions, which makes me excited. And that was Matty Edwards. Thank you for your question. He said, what are your thoughts and differences on Ollie Houghton and Hollands? Now, these are two people that I'm really, really excited about. So we'll go with my favorite first, Ollie Hollands. So this is Ollie Hollands. So Ollie Hollands, 18 years old, 5 games for Sandy this year. Exciting player. When I say Sandy, I mean Murray Bushrangers. 23.8 touches, 4 marks, 6 tackles, 5.8 inside 50s, 2.2 rebound 50s. No goals this year, but this guy here is, imagine if you combined, I don't like doing player comparisons, but I'll try. Imagine if you did Lockie O'Brien and he had a baby with Matty Cottrell, right? And you've got the real aggressive flair of Cotters, but the incredible engine of O'Brien, but the pace of Cottrell and the tenacity. He's a real hungry customer. And Carlton fans hate O'Brien because they go, oh, he's soft. But Ollie Hollands isn't soft. He plays a very hard brand, very similar to his brother at Gold Coast, Elijah, but he's a jet. And this kid here is, if Carlton get him, pick 10's too early for him, I think. Carlton might need to fall back, but if they do it, they go for it. But this kid here is the modern-day wingman. He's very Ed Langdon, shades of that Ed Langdon, the ability to cut traffic, but then the skill set of Kyle Amon, but he also loves his defensive pressure. He's a very, very good footballer.
No, and it looks like at the moving forward that this wing position is what's currently really valuable. It went out of vogue for a little while there. Looks like the next few years at least, the wing is going to be heavily used by clubs until someone works out a way to stop that. So I think investing there makes complete sense, Pom, particularly because we've got that's a weakness in our list. And I like the idea of topping up from underneath, not just from on top in terms of age and experience you bring into the club. So I like sandwiching the talent we have with a vet or an older player and bringing in a young player to develop there under them as well. So I'd be keen to see young Oliver Hollands on our list.
Well, he'll definitely be on there. He won't go top 10. When you look at the draft that's there, there's way too much talent. You've got Oshcroft, Canman, Philippou, Sheasel, starters, Wardlaw, Bussingler, Clark, Humphrey, do you know what I mean? Mackenzie, Binns. There's a lot of players that have been heavily touted and probably gone up. So 10, I would say, is a little bit early, but I've got him currently on my draft board there, going 15 to 25. Should we not take him? But I think that wing position, when you look at the teams ahead of us, the 9 other teams, this isn't something that they have a depth in, and there's a massive need for other things there. But the need here, 9, I think we need a quick, hard running player with foot skills. He's a very good kick. 9 durability. He's never been injured. He's had a couple of niggles, but they're not the normal growing injuries. Year 1 ready. He's ready to play there and then. And I think 15 to 25 is probably his market value.
Yeah, I like any player that can come in and impact early. We haven't seen a heap of that, despite how many early picks we've had in times. I'm taking sort of, Wiedering and Walsh out as those number 1 picks. But anyone who you can get some value out of straight away, I think it's really important. We saw us do it this year with Motlop, and it's been a while since we've been able to say that. We've only really seen our draftees play 1 or 2 games for the most part outside of the real superstars. So anyone who's ready to play AFL is exciting to me.
This kid is very sexy. This kid's very sexy, though. Very classy. And to answer your question, Sandra, I think you may see Carlton. I wouldn't be surprised when we've got the Camporelli twins, father and son wingers, who play high half forward 2024. So not next year, the year after. Right? So if I was Austin, next year's draft, if you look at the top 30 talents so far. Should anyone jump, but there will be jumpers. Humphreys in this draft is a huge jumper. Bailey Humphreys, about 2 months ago, was 30, and now he's reaching the top 10 on most draft boards. Very, very, very. He might take a chance to go future first. Maybe bundle up the Jones pick. Have a sniff at Sydney. Sydney are one to watch for me because the 90% of their core is young. So would they want 16 and 17? You look at their team, probably not. Probably not. So then if Carlton managed to get 16 and 17, you may be in the Ollie Hollands category. You'll definitely be in the Isaac Keeler, a guy I talk about all the time, category. Suddenly Carlton can fill 3 holes in this draft. So it'll be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised to see the future first leave Carlton this year.
No, and it's something we've done a few times of late. Not always to great success, but I'll back Austin in to load up, knowing that we've got a few father-sons over the next couple of years, which is not something we've had access to in quite some time, Pom. A long time. Since JSOS, really.
No, we haven't. Unfortunately, the ex-Carlton legends to start having kids like they used to. I'm going to say. All right, get on it. But the other guy that was asking the question, Ollie Houghton, Sandy Dragons. We know Pom likes to whore himself to Sandy Dragons occasionally. He's the 7 games for Sandy this year, mid-forward, so plays that high half-forward role, does pinch hit on the wing, has played on the ball a bit, but generally does his best work in the forward line. Kind of a little bit shades of a Cunners about this guy. It would be a good little Carlton reference. 16.3 touches, just under 4 marks, 1.6 tackles, 3.1 inside 50s, 0.6 rebound 50s. He does hit the scoreboard, though, just over half a goal a game. This guy's a classy footballer. Real classy footballer, Ollie. If I was choosing between the two for us, Hollands wins it, but whoever ends up with this kid will get a very good footballer.
So of the two, do you think this guy is more likely to be a forward scoreboard impactor, connector, Cunningham, Murphy type player rather than Hollands, who's more of your classic wingman?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is going to be, one of the guys that probably catches the eye. I think he's that modern day player that you're seeing a lot come through the draft. You see that probably the last 2 years now in the AFL draft. A lot of people saying, he can maybe go into the midfield. It's something that I get sick of hearing because a lot of people think Kemp's a midfielder, but he had 3 games, if you count the injured game, as an inside midfielder. The rest were doing what he's doing for the VFL. And a lot of them get moved into the midfield by their coaches to appeal to the draft as well. They have a duty of care and it showcases their foot candy and skills. But this guy, I think, will be that kind of like the DeGoey, the Cam Rayner recently, the Dustin Martin 2017, that kind of high half forward that with a bit of size will go inside. Once he gets out into space, can make something happen. But there it is. I think he's a 7 on the need. Again, I think we've got a lot of players that are kind of players, not out and out. And I think they'll go Ollie Hollands because it's obvious of what he does if Carlton do choose to take him.
And there's value in that. We've tried plenty of players over the recent years that are kind of players, and not many of them at this stage have paid off. I'm talking about guys like, as you mentioned, Kemp. We had Phil. We had Stocker, who's now been delisted. So if we can identify a guy and know exactly what role he's going to fill, my personal default position is always going to be to that, because I think if you can fill the roles at the draft and fill those core holes, you can go and find the exciting players, or the like I call Jack Martin, the sugar on top players, although you have to be on the park to be sugar on top.
Hey, I agree with you, and I think he's just one of them players that I don't think Carlton actually need. So he's a very good player, though, and he'll be a very, very good player. But I just think it's probably something that if I was Austin, I'd be thinking, is it worth the pick in the terms of that? I would much rather, if we were pick 10, Bailey Humphreys is the guy that I'm looking at. Should he be there? I've seen some draft boards give us Jed Buslinger, which I would have no idea how anyone could make a case for an 18-year-old key defender when our key defense at the moment has an average age of 22.5.
Yeah. Well,
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and I'm not against us topping up key positions. I'd rather top up the front half of the ground key position,
Bottom.
but certainly not with a top 10 selection. Bottom. So like, no way. Doesn't make sense.
I've said that with Cal Toomey, I'm afraid, not me. And Will Setterfield was another question we had. Now, Will Setterfield has been told to wait, right? Told to wait, which I think might be a sneaky suspicion that if we use pick 10, there is a massive amount of midfielders that are probably more suited to be Will Setterfield in the terms of they've got a specific role. But Jared Thomas asked this question. So let's take a look at Will Setterfield. 16.5 touches, 2.3 tackles, 3.5 score involvements, 1.5 clearances. We've compared him to inside midfielders because for me, his best position is inside midfield, not outside midfield. I know we try and convert him, but I would hope this time in 6 months' time, I have 4 or 5 natural wingers on the list, not one natural winger and 4 dudes who think they're a winger.
Yeah.
Oh, he's cracking on a bit. 24 years old, 57 games, inside and out midfielder. Never really had continuity at his position, but I think he's the big one here. And this is another new POM chart. Is he better, the first one, than anyone you could draft with your first 2-round picks? I've got him as a 6 purely because of his size. But genuinely, in your first 36, you could find a replacement for Will Setterfield very quickly. He is a depth player. If you sold him, I reckon you're probably looking at a 3rd. Rechan signing, though, I think it's a no-brainer for Carlton. It's not much money, and they do need the depth players.
Yeah, look, I think they will re-sign him on a short-term extension. I also think if I'm another club, I'm not actually going to trade for this guy. If he really wants to leave and he's really not happy at Carlton, no one else is going to pick him up in a preseason draft type thing. I know the AFL doesn't actually play hardball POM. I'm imagining a world where they're actually looking out for the best interests of their club. I wouldn't pay anything for him because I think there are other ways to get him. The other thing is guys like Will Setterfield, we think his core strength, right, is being able to find the pill and play a contested game of football. There's so many of those players floating around that are available and on the edge of the list because they're not multifaceted in their skill sets enough to be super desirable. You can find a Will Setterfield on the market, and you've probably got one on your list that you're considering, in the same position as this. I'm talking about like even a Tom Mitchell. He's at another level because he's a bit better, but same thing. His market for him is not huge. Luke Dunstan last year, his market was essentially 2 clubs. He went to Melbourne and basically didn't play a game this year. So those players who are those contested beasts, and their key attribute is being able to find the ball in the contest, is actually not super desirable at the moment. So I think we do re-sign him. I think he plays pretty much like he did this year, predominantly VFL. Hopefully, for as a fan's perspective, he spends that time in the VFL playing as a core inside midfielder. Because hopefully we've improved those wing positions enough where it's not even an option to play him there. Oh.
Mate, I think you've nailed it. And I think it's very important that Carlton do go about their business that way in the terms of bringing in, for me, I know there's a lot of talk about bringing in experienced players, but for me, if you do what Sauce did and you go, right, I need this type of player, but anyone who fits that category goes in. So doesn't matter who the fucker is, just get him in. Just get him in. I think when you listen to what Voss and Austin want, it's going to be the right players. The right players. So I would imagine that why they've said they focused on the draft very hard this year and why they keep saying and doubling down the draft will be active this year is because, in all honesty, the players people want for experience aren't the type of players that are presenting value for Carlton. So Goldstein being one, very quickly re-signed. Bruce being one, very quickly re-signed. Then you're starting to get into the territories of players like Chad Wingard and Brad Hill and players like that, players that are probably the best footballs past them, but also all the in-contract players that fit the bill are going to cost a lot of money. So for me, I think Carlton are going to go an actual sensible way. And that is the other mantra is build with the skill sets. And Austin said it a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be skills-based, targeted. So the way pressure works, the problem we've got is 90% of our list we've recruited under Sauce had something else, not good kicking skills, weren't good footballers. They were athletes. So everything's added. If you're naturally good at kicking, that won't get affected as much as the skill you've learned since being an AFL footballer. So I think that when Voss looks at this list, the 22 is set in stone. This year, it's about bringing durable. We've heard that word a lot from Voss and Austin in the last couple of weeks. Durability. Where Carlton gets stung, 5 players in the All-Australian, 8% of this list was available all year. 8%. 72% of replacements were injured at some point in the year, and their replacee was fit for them to come back in. It's a conveyor belt. If I'm Austin and Voss, I'm saying I need my second 22 fit, firing, and ready to play round 1 should there be an injury. I don't need clowns who are going to be fit for 8 games. I need people who are going to be 22.
You touched on Pom there the idea that we're not focusing on bringing in experienced players, which is something that as a fan base we've been asking for a long time. We're talking your sort of vets of the AFL, and I'm at some point in this year, I think it clicked in my head that I think you're right. I think they're going to focus on keeping this year's list younger, bringing in players underneath, topping up here and there with a Blake Acres who's in the middle of his career. Because pretty soon, in a couple of years, Paddy Cripps is going to be that vet. In a couple of years after that, Sam Doherty is going to be that vet. So I think they want to age. The initial idea that Paddy Cripps would be 25 and we'd be winning flags is past us. I think the new plan is for him to be that veteran in the side as we have all this talent beneath him. And I'm really excited to see that. However, I will say, and I know this wasn't on the run sheet, but one name that I would like us to take a look at, pending the price, would be Jack Gunston as a vet to come in, because I think we do actually have a list spot available for him and a role available to him. That 30-plus goal a year player, which we don't have. We've got Harry and Charlie, and then there's a drop-off to that next player. I think it was Paddy Cripps this year was our next best goal scorer. So there is one vet I still have out there on my list, which is Jack Gunston. But outside of that, it's all young players.
And it would have to be, for me, at the right price, because I think he suits the forward structure. But I think you've got to think, you've got TDK's contracts, you've got Harry Mackay's contract. Teams are going to sniff at them. And I don't believe, like a lot of fan base, that loyalty, that playing for Carlton means a lot to a lot of players. At the end of the day, they've got a business to run, a business themselves. So if you're saying to a club, it's not like Hawthorn in their dynasty years where they'd won a flag, they were like, well, look, we're fucking building something. And Luke Hodge made that famous quote, Brisbane was his highest valued contract because he'd always taken pay cuts to stay at Hawks. You're still selling a dream to some of these players. So, like, if let's just say Harry Mackay was offered 1.1 million at Essendon and we're saying, we're going to give you 600K, mate.
No,
that's a lot of fucking money. No.
And the more that the league professionalizes itself and the more player movement becomes easier to achieve and the more these salary allowances for selling picks comes in, the more money players are going to want, the new broadcasting rights as well. The players are going to want more money, and they know now that their careers are short. They're very savvy, and I don't begrudge anyone for moving for money. So you have to be able to accommodate the players who you want to keep. You have to be able to get them, especially for us, right? We haven't done anything. We almost made the finals. Whoopee. Why would Harry Mackay want to stay unless we can match the salary and then he can build with us? So you're right. Like a guy like Jack Gunston, absolutely. If the cost is too high, absolutely not. If he wants to come over for the last year or two of his career and because he sees a vision and we're able to convince him of that, great. But yeah, absolutely. The vets should not be coming in and impacting the salary structure of our list in any reasonable fashion.
I would say if I was Nick Austin, I'm going to go for veterans next year because there's a lot of players out of contract on decent money.
Yeah,
so you would imagine the salary cap issue will disappear next year because there's a lot more players you can get rid of that are on higher ends. This year, they're not. So I think for Austin, I reckon Voss wants another year. And a big thing Voss did, not many people talk about it, is at Port. There was an interview I saw 2 years ago with Hinckley when they suddenly came from being mediocre to winning the minor premier and being top four. And a lot of that was Voss, who actually swayed their list manager by saying, you know what, we don't need to get old players in. I can build you a leadership routine. So these players become young leaders, and Dersma, Butters, very influential around there. So that's it. And I want to leave you with, you know me, I like to pick a little weird name. So you all got me thinking of a guy in the draft. Now, I think, speaking to Dom McCoo, one of the wonderful things Dom told me is all their NGA academies in the AFL really set the players up for life. And he was talking about the NGA at Carlton, saying how exciting it is. Do you know what I mean? That you really learn to hit the ground running. And he felt like he was ahead of some of the draftees because he had the privilege of playing for Carlton's NGA. And I look and think, you know, with the new rules of they can't match picks till 40, you can start to have a little bit of a sniff at players and start to test the waters, so to speak. And this one is going to be hard to get across because, unfortunately, he comes under the father-son rule. But it could be with Will Ashcroft, could be a bit too much. And that is Jasper Fletcher. Now, this kid has really caught the eye because he started to play a little bit of VFL football as well, very young. 18.7 touches, 7 marks. He fits that bill as that taller player, you know, that the AFL... He's 184, but do you know what I mean? He's quite big and burly in the terms of body-wise and pings them marks. 3.3 tackles, 5.3 inside 50s, rebound 50s, and just under 2 goals a game. He's got a real good eye for goal. Now, this might be something that if I was Austin and I see if North take it serious, they should be bidding on Ashcraft pick 1. I don't want to see anything, but... Jasper Fletcher, he is linked to Adrian Fletcher, former Lion, remember? And this could be someone that Carlton have a look at. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of talk that clubs have started to meet with him just because they know that number 1, Will Ashcroft, should go there. So...
Well, it's going to be hard for them to maneuver to match both bids. If they even want to match both bids, they obviously want to match. If a bid comes on Ashcroft, which it should, that'll wipe them out. So if you legitimately want Fletcher and you think he will be good for our side, there is an opportunity to get him.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And I think the big thing for them is they'll be looking that 2 months ago, this guy was 55, 65. Suddenly, because he played them VFL games, which I do find bizarre by Brisbane in the VFL to do it, that he started to sneak into the window now. And it has been reported that a few Melbourne clubs have started to ask the question, even though he has nominated father-son. So these are the kind of things that Nick Austin can think about. Do I want to cheat the system? And Carlton haven't been afraid of disregarding the father-son and disregarding the NGA when the rules were a lot stricter. So it could be a really interesting thing.
Carlton and Richmond are the two. I think they're the 2 leaders in bidding on players. So I'm supportive of it. You've got to make these clubs pay for access to these players. That's what the system's in place for. It's not in there to be best friends with everyone, Pom.
Spot on. And that's it. And I think he's an 8.5 need. I think durability is an 8. 6, I've got him as year 1 ready because I think he's a little bit undersized. And I think to do what he does as a junior, it's going to be a year or 2 down the track. But someone that I think has got a very high ceiling because he comes from such a good academy, plow a year into him, get him into AFL shape. I think it's a big thing. I think it could be an option for Austin to go. If they trade out their 1st and 2nd next year to get an extra couple of picks, suddenly you might go, you know what, let's cause a bit of chaos.
Yeah, and no one wants to go home to Brisbane. So after 2 years, he's not going to ask to leave because why would you? Brisbane's a shithole.
Spawn, mate. And Sending my love to you, Gratz. I know we're becoming Fremantle reserves. We used to be GWS reserves, but so a couple of questions to finish off with. As for Harry Mackay, I can see a lot of you panicking. I really don't think Harry will leave. I think he's ploughed way too much energy and effort into this, and I think he will stay. What do you think, chat? What do you think, Lek?
I don't think he'll leave. There's a real world opportunity where he's going to get paid a lot of money in his next deal. He's going to get offered a lot of money in his next deal because clubs will think he's gettable because he will be I think he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of next year. I need to double check that, but people will come for him. But I think he'll stay. The club will have been planning for this for a while, and they would have the salary put aside for the 2021 Coleman medalists. They're not idiots.
Yeah, well, he is to confirm restricted free agent next year. So should it happen, Carlton will get whatever the weird AFL.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to talk about that on this show, Pom. It's ridiculous.
You know what I mean, then again, Chol was a second. So based just on that alone, even though that algorithm's weird, you would say that Carlton actually, if they did match the bid, you'd imagine if they matched the bid with Carlton, that would basically mean that Carlton get the AFL for
Carlton get Tasmania, not the team, the state.
Carlton on it. And the other question was from the wonderful John. I will be going more at length in this, but I will give you a name now. For me, Carlton would be absolutely mental. And I think it's probably 50-50 whether he'll be there, but I've got a feeling Bailey Humphries won't go top 5 to the one club that many people tout him. I think they'll go a different direction. I think the Cadman late season form will save Carlton. But if Bailey Humphrey is there all day long, he is someone that Carlton don't have on their list. He's basically what Jack Martin we hoped he'd be. Do you know what I mean? His ability to play as a lead-up third, on the ball, up there. He's like Stringer in the terms of he can also rest at full forward because he's exceptionally strong aerially, deceptively strong as well, and he's played against men as well. For me, him all day, John, to answer your question, all day. Absolute jet of a footballer.
And he doesn't have a lion tattooed to his chest yet or his stomach yet, which is a win as well.
It is, yeah. He gives me Bailey Smith vibes. Then Bailey Smith vibes of that. He's tenacious. I know that you guys in chat love someone who's hard, and he's hard. So you'll like it. He's hard with class though, and Pom likes a little bit of class too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Black Dog. Thank you very much for all the wonderful questions as well. I've got about 8 put away. So if I didn't come to you this week, we will be coming to you at some point because there's some great ones.
Thanks for having me, Pommy. It was bloody pleasure. Always a blast chatting footy with you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, chat. Thank you very much, everyone. We shall see you next week. Much love and go Blues.
Go Blues.